Hello everyone and welcome to the biology lecture series. And in this lecture, we'll be discussing some of the practice problems that are related to the topic respiration. So in the previous lecture, we have discussed about the respiration, what are the types of respirations, okay? We have talked about the external, internal, as well as the cellular respiration. Then we have talked about the anaerobic as well as the aerobic respiration. All right. And then we talked about the respiration in lower organisms. And then finally, we talked about the respiration in higher organism, that is humans. All right. So we'll be solving some of the objective type questions in this session. Okay. So these are the MCQs, okay, that are related to this topic, respiration. And we have studied all these topics, okay, so far in the previous lectures. So let's start with the first question. The first question is, the process of respiration is concerned with, and the options are, option A is liberation of the oxygen, liberation of carbon dioxide, liberation of the energy, and intake of the oxygen. So during respiration, what happens? We can understand it by writing this equation. So during respiration, there is an oxidation of the respiratory substrate. Okay, there is oxidation of the respiratory substrates. So what happens? Respiratory substrate, we know they can be carbohydrates, and within carbohydrates, mostly the respiratory substrate, it is glucose. Okay, so if glucose is not available, then other respiratory substrate can be utilized, proteins as well as the fats. All right, now what is the equation for the respiration? So it is C6H12O6, which is what? Which is the glucose. And this glucose is oxidized, and this process is known as oxidation. And what is produced? Carbon dioxide produced. Okay, then water is also produced, and energy is liberated in the form of ATP. So during aerobic respiration, 38 ATP are produced. Okay, so how many ATP are produced here? During, if we talk about the aerobic respiration, during aerobic respiration, 38 ATP are produced. Here, and during anaerobic, how many ATP are produced? During anaerobic respiration, only 2 ATP are produced. Okay. So let's have a look at this equation again. Glucose is oxidized to form carbon dioxide and water is released, but mainly respiration is involved in the liberation of the energy, and this energy is released in the form of the ATP, and this ATP is used for the various metabolic processes, or it is also used for the various processes that are vital for the living organism. Okay, so here the options are liberation of oxygen. So this is not correct. Liberation of carbon dioxide. So okay, carbon dioxide is produced as a byproduct. Okay, so carbon dioxide is produced as a byproduct. But what is the main role of the respiration? It is to produce the energy in the form of ATP. So option C is the liberation of the energy, and option D is the intake of the oxygen. So this is also not correct. Liberation of carbon dioxide also, we can say this is not correct. So what should be the answer here? Option number C is the correct answer. Liberation of the energy is the main purpose of the respiration. Clear? And carbon dioxide is released as a byproduct, which is eliminated out of the body by the process known as exhalation. All right, and the organs involved are lungs. The next question is the common immediate source of energy for cellular activity is. So let's have a look at the options: NAD, ATP, DNA, or RNA. So what is the immediate source of energy? In the previous question, we were talking about the ATP. All right, that ATP, it is also known as the energy currency of the cell. ATP is also known as the energy currency of the cell. Okay, now NAD. What is NAD? NAD is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Okay, it is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Okay, this is NAD. Then ATP, you know, it is adenosine triphosphate. All right. Triphosphate means it consists of 3 phosphate. All right. So 3 phosphate are present. First phosphate, second phosphate, and the third phosphate. And here adenine group is present here. Now, whenever there is a breakdown of this phosphate molecule, so if there is a breakdown here, all right, then what will be formed? So this was ATP. Then ADP will be formed, adenosine diphosphate, by the breakdown of this phosphate. So here we will have adenine, then we have 2 phosphate only. This is ADP. Then there will be a breakdown of this phosphate also. And here in this process, energy will be released. Okay, here also energy will be released by the breakdown of the ATP. Okay, then what will be produced? AMP, adenosine monophosphate, means adenine is attached to just 1 phosphate. All right, so this energy is released by the breakdown of the ATP or the breakdown of the phosphate group present in the ATP. Clear? That's why the immediate source of energy is ATP. So what are DNA and RNA? DNA is deoxyribose nucleic acid, whereas RNA is the ribose nucleic acid. Okay, so there is a slight difference between DNA and RNA. Okay, here the sugar is the deoxyribose, here the sugar is ribose. Okay, so both of these are nucleic acid, and nucleic acid are not involved, or they are not the source of energy for the cellular activity. The only immediate source of cellular activity is ATP. Clear? So what should be the answer? Option number B, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the immediate source of the energy. Next question is, the tissue respiration refers to. Let's have a look at the options. Inspiration, external respiration, internal respiration, and fourth option is expiration. Okay, so what is inspiration? Inspiration is the intake of the oxygen rich air. Okay, this is known as inspiration. What is expiration? Expiration is the exhaling, okay, or the expelling of the carbon dioxide. All right, you can say expelling or taking out of the oxygen poor air or carbon dioxide rich air, of the carbon dioxide rich air, okay, or you can say oxygen poor air. What is external respiration? We have discussed in the previous lecture about the external respiration. So what is external respiration? What happens here? You can say the oxygen from the atmosphere, this enter into the lungs. All right. And from the lungs, the oxygen will enter into the blood. So this is what happens in the external respiration. Here, the oxygen which is present in the atmosphere, it will enter into the lungs, and from the lungs, it will enter into the blood. Now, what is internal respiration? In internal respiration, what happens? So it is an exchange of gas between the tissue and the blood. So now oxygen has reached blood because of the external respiration, and from the blood, the oxygen is transferred into the tissues. Okay, this is known as internal respiration, exchange of gases between the blood and the tissues. So in the blood, okay, so in blood, oxygen is present. Okay, this oxygen is transferred to what? To the blood or to the tissues. All right, this oxygen diffuses into the tissues, and tissue is producing what? Tissues are producing the carbon dioxide. They are producing carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide then enters into the blood. So there is an exchange of gases between the blood and these tissues. This is what happens in the internal respiration. All right. Whereas in external respiration, there is exchange of gases between the atmosphere and the organism. Clear? So what should be the answer? The tissue respiration refers to, so we are talking about the tissue here. So what should be the answer? Internal respiration. And I've already explained you why internal respiration is known as the tissue respiration. All right, because it is an exchange between the blood and the tissues. The next question is, if the carbon dioxide concentration in the blood increases, then the rate of breathing will be, okay, and the options are, it will decrease, it will stop, it will increase, or it will have no effect. So answer is, the breathing will increase. Okay. While it will increase, let's have a look at the explanation. Now, the elevation of the carbon dioxide levels induces a beneficial shift in the blood pH. Okay, so there is a change in the blood pH, and these alteration can be sensed by the chemoreceptors located in the medulla oblongata of the hindbrain. Now, which serves as a regulatory hub for the respiration. So the respiration is regulated by the region of the hindbrain known as the medulla oblongata. Okay, so some chemoreceptors are present, and these chemoreceptors, they sense the alterations, okay, in the pH, and this pH is changed because of the elevation of the carbon dioxide levels or change in the carbon dioxide level. So if the carbon dioxide can change the pH. Alright, so pH depends on the carbon dioxide level also. It can be acidic or it can be basic depending on the concentration of the carbon dioxide. So this change in the pH is sensed by the chemoreceptors which are present in the medulla oblongata of the hindbrain, which acts as a regulator for the respiration. Now, because of this, the respiratory center ramps up the rate of respiration. All right, clear? Now, next question is, vocal cords occur in. Okay, so vocal cords, they occur in pharynx, glottis, bronchial tube, or larynx. Okay, what is the correct answer here? So you know about the pharynx, glottis, bronchial tube, and larynx. So first, let's have a look at the answer here. Larynx. So larynx is also known as the vocal voice box. Okay, this is also known as the voice box, and the vocal cords are present here. Now let's have a look at the explanation. Okay, now we know the larynx is known as the vocal cord. Now, why the other options are incorrect? So glottis, let's talk about glottis first. So the glottis, located between the vocal folds in the larynx, is commonly regarded as the primary passageway regulating the airflow between the lungs and the mouth. That's why it doesn't contain the vocal cords. Now, what are bronchial tubules? Bronchial tubes, okay, they which divide into smaller tubes known as the bronchioles, okay, are occasionally called bronchi or the air passages. So bronchial tubule, we have already talked about the bronchia. So there are two bronchia, left bronchia and the right bronchia, and they enter into the lungs. And in the lungs, the bronchia divide into bronchioles. Okay, all right. This is clear. So that's why larynx was the correct answer. And third option was pharynx. So we have already discussed about the pharynx. So this pharynx, okay, it has dual role. First of all, it has a role in the respiratory system. Okay. So these pharynx, it receives the air from the nasal cavity. Okay. It receives air from the nasal cavity. All right. And it also has a digestive function, or it also have a role in the digestive system. So the food passes through the pharynx and it enters into the esophagus. The food, it passes through the pharynx. Okay. And then it enters what? Esophagus. And from the esophagus, it will enters into the stomach. Enter into the esophagus, which is a tube-like structure. And from the esophagus, it will enter into the stomach. And from stomach, it will enter the small intestine. And from the small intestine, the food, undigested food enters into the large intestine. And then it is thrown out of the body through anus. All right. So now you know all these terms: glottis, bronchial tubules, and pharynx. Okay. And now you can understand why larynx was the correct answer. The next question is, in man, which of the following structure is analogous to the spiracles of the cockroach? Okay. So we were discussing about the spiracles. So when we discuss about the respiration in the grasshopper, so similarly in cockroach also spiracles are present, where what happens, where the exchange of gases take place. Okay. Exchange of gases takes place in specialized structure known as the spiracles, and in the insects, the respiratory system is known as the tracheal system, or the exchange of the gases takes place with the help of the tracheal system, which consists of the trachea and the tracheoles. Okay, and what are spiracles? Spiracles, they are nothing but they are the tube-like structure. So they are the tubes, okay, which are involved in the exchange of the gases. And these spiracles, they are seen in the members of the phylum Arthropoda, which consist of insects such as cockroach and grasshopper. All right, clear? Now, next question. First one is let's have a look at the options. Option A is the alveoli, option B is the lungs, option C is bronchioles, and option D is nostrils. All right. Nostrils is the correct answer here. Okay. Now let's have a look at the explanation why nostrils can be compared to the spiracles of the cockroach. Now, insects, they possess minute external openings known as the spiracles, which are present on their bodies. Now, these spiracles act as entry point for air into their respiratory system. Now, similarly, humans have external pores named as nostrils, okay, through which the air enters and it reaches the respiratory tract. Alright, that's why nostrils can be compared to the spiracles. Okay, through nostrils, what happens? The air is taken inside. Okay, the oxygen rich air is taken inside and it reaches what? It can then reach the respiratory tract. Alright, this is clear. Now, next question. Which of the following prevents the collapsing of the trachea? And the options are diaphragm, ribs, cartilaginous ring, and the muscles. Okay, we have already discussed about all of these terms. So diaphragm is a, you can say, a muscular structure or a muscular ring, you can say, that divides the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. So if this is the diaphragm, okay, so diaphragm also plays a role in the breathing. Okay, and we have discussed about the role of diaphragm also in the previous lecture. So here it divides the, so upper region is known as the thoracic cavity. So it divides the thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity. Okay, and then we have the ribs. Ribs, you know, they are the bony structures present in the thoracic region. Cartilaginous ring. So when we were talking about the trachea, so trachea consists of around 16 to 20 cartilaginous ring, okay, which prevents the collapsing of the trachea when there is no oxygen present. Okay, so in the case where is no oxygen present, then the trachea can collapse, but this cartilaginous ring means they are made of the cartilage. They prevent the collapsing of the trachea. Now, fourth one is the muscles. So muscles don't play any part in the collapsing of the trachea. All right, but these muscles which are present in the thoracic region, they help in the breathing process, especially the muscles which are attached to the ribs. So they contract and they relax. Okay, and because of this, we can inhale or exhale. Clear? So what should be the answer? Option number C, cartilaginous rings helps the prevention of the collapse of the trachea when there is no air present. The next question is, which of the following gases makes the most stable combination with the hemoglobin of the red blood cells? Okay, so hemoglobin, you know, is the carrier of the gases. Okay, so it carries oxygen also, it carries carbon dioxide also, and it can also form complexes with the carbon monoxide. So these are the options here: carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, oxygen, or nitrogen. So answer is option number B. It forms the most stable complex with the CO. CO means carbon monoxide. Okay, mono means one. There is only one oxygen present. That's why we call it monoxide. Clear? Now let's have a look at the explanation. Now, when breathing, carbon monoxide reacts with the hemoglobin. So carbon monoxide is present in where? It is present in the atmosphere. It reacts with the hemoglobin and it binds so strongly that it also inhibits the binding of the oxygen. Now over time, it binds to all the hemoglobin in the human body, preventing it from carrying oxygen effectively, leading to insufficient oxygen in the bloodstream. Okay, so it forms carbon monoxide. Now let's move on to the next question. Now, the volume of air inspired or expired with each normal breath is called. Okay, so here we are talking about the inspiration and the expiration. Inspiration is the taking up of the or taking in of the oxygen rich air, and expiration is the exhaling or eliminating of the oxygen poor air, or you can say carbon dioxide rich air. Okay, and this carbon dioxide is produced by the process of respiration that is happening within the cells, and it's also known as the cellular respiration. Now let's have a look at the options. First option is the tidal volume. Second option is the inspiratory capacity. Third option is the total lung capacity. And fourth option is the residual volume. All right. Now let's have a look at the answer here. First, so the answer is option number A, tidal volume is the correct answer here. Okay. So tidal volume, you already know what is tidal volume now. Now explanation for the incorrect options. Why the other options are incorrect. Now let's have a look at first the inspiratory reserve volume. So, or you can say IR. The maximum volume of air that can be inhaled after a normal quiet exhale is the sum total of the tidal volume and the inspiratory reserve volume. Okay, this is known as the IR, inspiratory reserve. Correct? Then what is lung capacity? So lung capacity, it is also known as the total lung capacity, TLC. It represents the amount of air present in the lungs during maximal inhalation effort. Okay, so lung capacity is also known as the total lung capacity and represents the amount of air present in the lungs during maximal inhalation. Whenever you inhale to your maximum limit, okay, then the amount of air present in the lungs is known as the lung capacity. And the last one is the residual volume. What is residual volume? Okay, so it denotes the volume of the air that stays in the lung following a vigorous exhalation effort. Okay, so it is the volume of the air that remains in the lungs after you exhale to your maximum level. Okay, then also some volume is left in the air, and that volume of the air is known as the residual volume. Okay, so lung capacity is related to the inhalation, and the residual volume, it is related to the exhalation. Okay, clear? So that's why answer was the tidal volume. Clear? The next question is, most of the carbon dioxide in the blood is carried in the form of, options are carbonic acid, bicarbonates, carbaminohemoglobin, or dissolved carbon dioxide. Now the answer is bicarbonates. Okay, option B is the correct answer here. Now what is the explanation? The primary method of transporting carbon dioxide from the body cells to the lungs is through bicarbonates found in the blood plasma. Okay, now these bicarbonates, they are conveyed to the lungs where they are converted back into the carbon dioxide and expelled through the process known as the exhalation. Clear? Now approximately 70 to 90% of the carbon dioxide is transported in the form of bicarbonate ions. Clear? So this was the explanation to this question. All right, this is clear. And what was carboxyhemoglobin? So carboxyhemoglobin is formed when carbon dioxide binds reversibly to the hemoglobin. All right. So carbon dioxide binds reversibly to the hemoglobin found in the red blood cells, forming the carboxyhemoglobin, which then transported to the lungs. Approximately 10% of the carbon dioxide is transported via carboxyhemoglobin. Okay, this is clear. Next is the plasma. What was plasma? It is characterized as the component of the blood devoid of blood cells but comprising the blood proteins. Okay, so blood cells are represented. What are the blood cells? These are RBCs, and we have WBCs. Okay, and the blood platelets. Okay, but the plasma consists of plasma proteins such as albumin and globulin. Now roughly 10% of the carbon dioxide is conveyed to the lungs dissolved in the plasma. Okay, this is clear. So this was the end of this session. We'll be discussing about rest of the topics and some of the other questions in the next lecture. Thank you very much for listening.